Welcome to Porto, Portugal's second biggest city. The essence of Porto comes from the river Douro. In fact, the city is split in two. What you see across is Vila Nova de Gaia, joined to Porto by the famous Dom Luís Bridge. It's worth coming down to walk along the waterfronts and see the restaurants, but beware, these are tourist restaurants. Our first day exploring started, like many others, at the São Bento train station. This has 20,000 hand-painted tiles covering the walls. This was opened in 1916, and the images are a way of introducing Porto to travellers. Another building with some impressive tiles is the Capela de Santa Catarina. This is at the end of one of the most famous shopping streets in Porto. 20th century tiles covering an 18th century building. Just around the corner is one of my favourite places in Porto, the Mercado Bolhão. Built in 1914 and then reopened after a lengthy restoration in 2022. This, at first glance, seems like a tourist attraction, but in reality it's a real market. Over 80% of the store holders are 4th and 5th generation. It's got some tourist quirks like the pasta cooked in the cheese, but other stands serve some real Porto specialities like these canned sardines. You can buy a little plate of them and grab a glass of wine from the next door stand. And then round it off with an espresso and a delícia de Porto. Delicious. The Rua Formosa at the bottom of the market has some really interesting stores for foodies. This lovely grocery store with its cheese and ham. And then what about this delightful store? This sells canned sardines and other fish, and they were just so friendly and such a delightful array of products with beautiful paintings on their cans. On to Rua Santa Catarina, and we almost walked past this store and only really went in to look at the paintings on the ceiling and the mouldings around the side. I'm so glad we did. This is meia dúzia, which means half a dozen in Portuguese. And these are gourmet products, things like chocolate spreads and jams and honey, all sold in painter's tubes. And Diego gave us tastings of everything. They are delicious. Carrying on along this cobbled street, you'll come across the Church of Sant Ildefonso. These tiles were added in the 1930s. There's some beautiful buildings around here. It's really just lovely to walk around. Porto was once one of Western Europe's poorest cities, and there are still signs of that around, although tourism is renovating the city. We came to Tierra da Sé to see the cathedral, but first we went in the Bishop's Palace. This was a bit of a surprise. As you walk up these steps, the paintwork on this ceiling is absolutely stunning. The colours are so surprising. These pastel pinks and yellows are really not like something I've seen before. And you can visit the apartments and see some of the glories and some of the paintings that the bishops had. The ticket covers the cathedral as well, and as you enter into this cloisters you really get a feel of Harry Potter about it. It's really quite stunning, again with these beautiful azulejo tiles. These show the metamorphosis of Oviedo. The cathedral itself has more gold than blue. The top deck of the Dom Luís Bridge is shared by trains and tourists alike. You feel the vibrations as the trains are coming, you need to step aside. This bridge wasn't designed by Gustave Eiffel, but by his colleague Théophile Sigrig. The Rua das Flores is a good central place to stay, a pedestrianised street with plenty of bars and restaurants. The next day we crossed the river and went to Vila Nova de Gaia and visited Wow. We started with the wine experience. This is a really stunning museum all about how to make wine across the world. It focuses a lot on Portuguese wine, but not just. There's a whole section with different types of Portuguese houses, and it finishes with a wine tasting. The whole complex of wow is really impressive. Another museum was the Chocolate Museum, which teaches you all about how to make chocolate and the history of chocolate. They've even got their own chocolate factory. There are several very good restaurants on the site. It's worth going just for them. And then we visited the Taylor Port Lodge, one of the oldest port manufacturers in the region, where you can learn all about how to make port and then taste it in their lovely garden. There are no wines grown in Porto. Instead, they travel down the Douro River on these barges and into the port warehouses. Nowadays, it's a bit more of a tourist spot, and the wines come in by road. We took some bikes out from TT Three Ways and cycled along the edge of the estuary and out to the Atlantic coast. Foz is a nice break from Porto. You get to see the sea. We found this fabulous little bar, a little piece of paradise. It really is lovely, the eye bar in Foz. We had some gorgeous clams. It's a lovely cycle, although part of it is on cobblestones, which is not the most comfortable. We got electric bikes because I'm lazy. A food tour allows you to experience some of the culture and tastes of a city. This was with Taste Porto, and we had cheese and sardines and some beef in buns, all accompanied by some really good wine. Dessert in a cafe and then some port tasting to round it all off. We were lucky to finish off our time in Porto with a beautiful sunset, and where better to experience it than the Yeatman Hotel with this stunning panoramic view over the river. It really is such a beautiful place, and I can't wait to go back.
Nessa rua branca, meu passo afunda devagar. Sopro frio na garganta e o relógio sem luar. Teu cheiro de maresia se escondeu nesse casacão.